Hi, and welcome to Aging in Place for every stage in life. What if you could visit or have a home that would accommodate anyone at any age, any physical ability, at any time? How cool would that be? That's what we're doing here at Aging in Place. Why me? Because I'm a doctor of psychology and I specialize in physical spaces and health and wellness. Also, I love designing with intent at any age. Why now? Because we, the baby boomers, want to age in place gracefully, and we want our families around us as much as we can. And why you, the audience? Because we want you to experience what it's like to have a home that's safe, aesthetically pleasing, and that you can live in at any age, with any ability, at any time. I'd like to introduce you now to Aging in Place podcast for every stage in life. Hi, and welcome to Aging in Place podcast for any stage in life. I'm Dr. Debbie Lines. I'm here today with Louis Tenenbaum. Very excited to talk with you. Have been stalking you on the internet, so I know just enough to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, he's like, really? How fun is that? Before we get started and really get into the meat of things, I would love to talk a bit about how you got into this. I will share that in prepping, you did say you did your first handicapped accessible or universally designed renovation, 31 years ago?
31 years ago. So when I finished college, which was 1976, I wanted to build my own solar house. And, what we now call low carbon footprint, then we called low energy lifestyles. And I wanted to be a person who lived it out. So I, to my father's incredible dismay, I got out of college and found a job on a construction site and worked my way up, becoming a carpenter, and then moved from being a hippy-dippy carpenter in Ann Arbor to sort of urbanish contractor in Washington, D.C. and the suburbs.
Wow. Where did you go to college?
At University of Michigan.
Okay.
And then I got here and started working as a contractor, which was kind of an additional skill set to being a carpenter. I knew my way around reading a blueprint and building something, but now I started to take on both sales and project management and running a business.
Got it.
And at one point, a realtor that I knew quite well asked me to help a family where a young man had been shot and was about to be discharged paraplegic, so a wheelchair user. And I asked his mother what she needed a carpenter for. She said, I didn't have to help him in the bathroom before he was injured. I don't want to help him in the bathroom when he comes home. And I didn't know what to do. You mentioned universal design. What I did for them then, I would not do now. I don't think it was sufficient, but there was no information. It was pre-internet. You couldn't find anything. OTs didn't know. Nobody kind of knew. And I did kind of the best I could. And he was independent in the bathroom. Luckily, he was 12. He was young and strong. He had good, strong arms. I built a shower he could transfer into and so forth. And he was independent in the bathroom. And I saw the real significance that had for his family, that he didn't need help. He was independent. And I really was jazzed by what I had done with my hammer and saw for this family. And then a couple of years later, so that was 88, about 89 or 90, I read an article about the age wave.
Right.
And wow, there's a niche there that, amongst college-educated contractors in the Washington, D.C. area, I could carve out a niche for myself that would be doing this sort of remodeling for people who are aging. So I got involved with the Aging Network, which was very robust in the Montgomery County, Maryland, D.C. area, because they saw that if the private segments were boosted and made to run smoothly, that it would take pressure off county and public resources. So we have a very robust, still to this day, very robust, very professional aging network services organization. And I joined that, or attempted to, because everybody was, of course, suspect of a contractor trying to rip off little old ladies.
Sure.
So after a couple years of attending meetings and so forth, I got a chance to move some stuff for the annual Christmas party in the trucks that my guys had. And all of a sudden I was a good guy instead of this bad guy. And they kind of let me in. And over the years, starting from there, the question I had then, and it's still the question I have today, if this is such a good idea, if updating housing is such a good idea, why doesn't anybody do it?
I hear you.
By the end of the 90s, I was teaching for occupational therapists and at the National Association of Home Builders and all those places teaching about what to do. And yet still, and to this day, so now, 30 years after my start, the market hasn't developed. The ideas are there, universal design is there. What to do is not a problem. The products are beautiful and incredible.
Right, they are, I agree.
But we still don't have the market. So there's a big difference between the need and the demand. So and that leaves a lot of people educated and ready, as you are.
Sure.
But we're not changing homes.
How do you motivate them? How do you stop the inertia and really get people to be proactive now?
So, a couple of years ago, the Frameworks Institute, I don't know if you've read their studies, showed that people just don't want to talk about this. They think that they're powerless about aging and the aging process. They don't like the conversation. People of all ages, they think they're powerless. They think that when we excited professionals talk about it, as you do, Debbie, with such excitement, that they, in fact, are turned off by that and they think we're crackpots. So all of the stuff that we're kind of doing, and I say this all the time, I've probably done 200 consumer presentations. And I should have just gone for a long bike ride because nobody did anything as a result.
How interesting.
What can we do? And that made me, at a certain point, look, particularly I was reading an article about urban planning, and I realized that everything in an urban planning magazine or in the urban planning sphere happens from policy. What are the policies that influence the location of a new hotel or office building or anything? And in the DC area where we've had the metro, the subway that came in, that's where the development occurs. When in more rural areas, you put a freeway interchange exchange and all of a sudden you got 3 hotels, 4 gas stations, a Waffle House, and 3 other things. That's what influences it, policy spending. So how can we look for analogies where policy influences, and it's sometimes private policy and sometimes it's government policy. So we have, the biggest one we can see is hybrid cars. People buy hybrid cars because they want to have a good impact on the environment, but because they get that rebate. Or maybe it's because they get to go in the high occupancy vehicle lanes if they have that hybrid car. People put solar collectors on their roof, and I put them on my roof. And remember, I started out wanting to build solar houses. Sure. And it wasn't until that rebate that I actually put my money on the line. But what can we look for? And we look in the healthcare field, and we see that you get a discount on your health insurance if you don't smoke. You get a discount on your car insurance if you don't have tickets. So what kinds of discounts, what kind of incentives can we look to private industry or the government to provide us that will change the conversation from this is in order to avoid frailty, this is in order to avoid falls, this is in order to avoid being a burden on your children, and 2, wow, this is a great way to do a project because I save some money.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I have my 92-year-old father living with me now, and I also have a 2-year-old granddaughter. I have 10 grandkids, and I find that their needs are very similar. And the more that I've talked about the similarity between young kids and what they need, wide opening strollers going in, a lot of help. And my dad, the more I watch my kids go, oh yes, handheld showers, what a great idea.
Exactly. When my kids were growing up, we had the handheld in their bathroom was this one from Growy that looked like a little sea serpent.
I know exactly which one.
We called it a Nessie bath because that was Nessie the monster or something. I don't even remember. So I think you've hit a point there, and yet that still calls attention. So when I look at this, I think to the idea that when I started trying to build solar houses, I was trying to work on the way that we adapt to the environment, because our housing, that we adapt to the environment, and how can we be gentler with our adaptation. Now it's shifted. The people have changed. Aging has changed the physical nature of our population. Longevity is a gift and a bonus. How can
Exactly.
we, in the same ways that we got longevity, which was by funding the National Institutes on Health, how can we fund incentives that will encourage people without trying to get to that universal design argument, which just makes people slow down?
So what I hear you say, now you're getting the psychologist in me. What I hear you say is, oh, we've got 30 seconds. Don't you hate it when that happens? I'm going to take a break and then I'll tell you what I heard you say. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on Aging in Place podcast for any stage in life. Hi, I'm Dr. Debbie Lines. Design elements are psychologically and physically supportive and conducive to health and wellness. To learn more about what Lines on Design can do for you, for more information on certified aging in place and facilitative and supportive design, look for us at linesondesign.com. That's LYNES on design.com. We are back here on the Aging in Place podcast for any stage in life. Again, I'm here with my new friend, Louis Tenenbaum. And I tell you what, the hardest part about doing a podcast is not talking over someone. When you get really excited and I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, I'm sitting here, doing all kinds of cheerleading things so that you know that I'm 100% behind you. What I was going to say when we took a break was, instead of making this a negative, it's almost as though what I hear you say is we need to make these additions a value added. In other words, when you walk into a home now, and the new buzzword for me is the visitability. When someone walks into my home now, I want my 92-year-old dad to be able to enjoy it, my kids to be able to enjoy it, my grandkids to be able to enjoy it. And again, what Henrik said, that's really true. It's kind of the what's in it for me.
Right. So this is exactly it. How can we change that conversation so basically? So when we go to the store, we see the yellow tag on energy appliances.
Correct.
And we just go there. It's not a hard stretch, right? Mm-mm. But when you go to the home safety aisle, you step back because do I need that? What is it the implication? So how can we have on my site, if you went and see, we call it the purple tag.
Exactly.
Take the products that are correct products to get the designs that you want to have, the beauty and the adaptability and usability for anybody who walks in the door. Call them purple tag products and say that if you use these products correctly, you get some kind of discount, whether it's a discount from your health insurer, whether it's a discount from the federal government. So the thing that I'm pushing, and I've sent well done letters to the Senate Aging Committee and to congresspersons and so forth. This is really about engaging this population in a task to, the first phase, I think, is this. We get to use our 401k and IRA dollars, which are our money, already planned for retirement, and we get to use it without tax or penalty for the elements of our projects that use these purple tag products.
So I've got a purple tag product. I'm going to put a toilet paper holder in that actually doubles as a grab bar. I'm going to create a bathroom sink that I can take the cabinets off of, and a wheelchair can roll under there if I need be eventually. And I'm doing this proactively. I'm doing this before, if I'm listening to you correctly, I'm doing this before I need to.
Exactly. And let me say two things about that. You're doing it before you need to because the current state of this you've all probably heard the old saying, you got to close the barn door before the horse gets out, right?
Yep.
So the current state of this is that all these recommendations come from our health providers and funding comes from Medicare or Medicaid waiver programs after you've had a fall, before you can be discharged. Well, that is exactly closing the barn door after the horse gets out. If we would promote these things in advance, we would get the benefit of prevention, which we don't get after the horse is out of the barn. And yet we don't, we need to have a different conversation about that. So that's one thing. We need to move it downstream for that reason, to get prevention, but also because it takes time. you're an interior designer, I'm a contractor. We can't do it tomorrow or next week. We have
That's
to
right.
put plans in place. We have to order materials. We have to get a permit. We have to line everybody up in the project so that we have critical dates where the cabinets are going to be delivered and so forth. That all takes time to orchestrate. So for those two reasons, we need to move it downstream. And who is the low-hanging fruit to move it downstream? Well, you're in business. It's your customers who are already remodeling. So right now, the remodeling industry is growing faster than
My
the
God.
business. There's
Yes.
$400 billion worth of remodeling, something like $130 billion. B with a B, billion with a B, is spent by people over 50 or 55. What if even 5% of those projects were 5% of those dollars were spent in a way that created universal age-friendly housing? That would be a $6 billion investment.
And for people who may not even know what that would look like, if we're giving specific examples that are pretty easy, it would be lighting a stairway. It would be some wayfinding things that really wouldn't, it would be creating an entrance to your home that would make it easily seen by an ambulance and also easy to access.
Right.
So I think
the thing is, you don't need to tell people all that. All you need to tell them is what's in it for me, that it's cheaper. Let the contractor be
there
educated.
you go.
Let the designer be educated.
Oh.
The homeowner doesn't even need to know. Don't tell them.
Okay.
Just say, you want to redo your bathroom? You know, if you make a curbless shower, it will be less expensive than a curved shower because you get to get a discount on the tile that goes into that curbless shower.
I'm so going to use that on my client tomorrow.
Well, but it's not yet cheaper. But it's not yet cheaper because we don't have these policies in place. So once the policies get into place, then the contractors become the sales force of the designers, because you can say, look, you got $25,000 bathroom, and you can get the tile at a 30% discount because you're going to use 401k dollars to buy it. So that means that $3,600 part of it really only costs $2,750, and now you've got $4,000 to spend on a more exotic light fixture or wallpaper or whatever it is you want. And the client, they only say to you, will it look good?
That's right. And that's true.
Everything I do is magazine worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the conversation. You know, when you go in to get your hair cut, you don't have to know how to cut hair. You just say, make me look really good for the ball next week.
That's right.
The same thing with your contractor or designer.
I mean, I think it's so brilliant. What I really hear you say again is you're keeping it simple.
I hope to. Right. It is simple. I mean, there are details, but remember, the details, as you know, there's nothing new about it. It's just using the same materials and the same techniques in a little bit different way. Building a curbless shower still uses membranes and so forth to keep it from water running down the hall instead of a big honking curb. But
just got a drain that goes that way.
Right. There's nothing that's out of the capability of good quality craftsmanship.
And that would even be you stacking a couple of closets in case somebody ever needed an elevator, kind of even prepping for that.
Absolutely. Whatever. And you know, the rules, like any regulations, have to be written. And the range of policy ideas for doing this is huge. Now, some people will come back and go, oh, well, how many people have a 401k or an IRA? Aren't you depleting their long-term savings that they use for retirement?
The opposite.
I would say $17 trillion in 401k and IRA accounts. So there's a lot of money out there. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is this. If we put, a grab bar, the average grab bar that hits the hospital costs $30,000. If we put in 300 grab bar installations at $300 each and pay for them, and one person avoids a fall, it's a break-even investment. And look at this one. The worst thing about illness and injury is that when we have an incident, we go to rehab, we come out of rehab, and we have an incident, and what we most want to do is, I'm over it, let me go home. Now, if you go to a rehab facility because you can't get in the door, you can't get into the shower, it costs a lot of money, and the heart part of your postponement, the feelings that you have about being over that incident is postponed and postponed. You're not back home where you will thrive. So if we've spent $10,000 getting your home prepared,
Yeah.
then, and you avoid 1 month in a rehab facility, it's a break-even investment. As soon as you get into that second month, you're money ahead. So that $10,000 out of your $100,000 401k has the potential to really save you and the country the big bucks. And that part about it being policy and the country and not you is the big part of the sale.
You're giving me such a different point of view. I'm seeing things from a different lens just listening to you talk.
Well,
you know,
and you know what? It only took me 25 of the 30 years
to get that. I hear you.
To get there. So it's you know, the interesting thing is older citizens, people like you and I, people over about 45 and 50, are the strongest voters, the most consistent voters. Everybody who is a legislator or whatever knows that. So now the thing is, instead of asking us to get on board with universal design, I want us to get on board with policies that keep people in their homes as a portion of the longevity bonus that we get from healthcare. And when you do that, you engage people into this topic as politicians, as political voters, as a grassroots constituency, rather than as a consumer of remodeling service.
Here's what I'd like to do. We're going to take another quick break. I want to come back and talk to the people that are listening. And how do we do this? What is the real, is it a grassroots effort? What are we going to do? Stay with us. We'll be back here on Aging in Place for Any Stage in Life.
For more podcast episodes, links, information, and media inquiries, please visit our website at aginginplacepodcast.com as we transition through life with the comfort and ease you deserve. Discover how you can create a home that will adapt to you as you journey through life and the changes it will bring. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as our host, Debbie Lines, and her expert guests discuss relevant topics to creating a home for all decades in life. Don't miss our weekly episodes of Aging in Place podcast for every stage in life.
We are back here on the Aging in Place podcast for Any Stage in Life. We are here with Louis Tenenbaum, and I just shared with him during our break that sometimes people just resonate with you and you hear what they're saying. And I think that your passion, plus you're very articulate, has me looking at things from a much more macro level. I don't know if that's a fair way of saying it. Rather than from an individual grab bar saving someone, it is from this policy position. Let's talk again. You mentioned it at the very end of the last segment, but let's talk about how you see these policies being implemented or even brought forward.
Right. So we're actually, my organization, Homes Renewed, which is a coalition.
Okay.
Coalition of the stakeholders, and that's consumer stakeholders, policy stakeholders, and also the business community. Because the business community has a role in this, and it's not organized yet. So we're trying to we're working with this policy firm to come up with a real wholehearted strategy. Now, what that includes is we have to articulate, as you said, we have to articulate what it is we want in terms of policy, and then get it written up in language that can go forward. Is it state? Is it local? Is it federal? Well, yes, it's all of the above.
It's really interesting because, not to interrupt, it's really interesting because I live in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And for people who've never been here, we have an aging population. And from a real estate, right. And from a real estate marketing, I would think the real estate folks would be super interested in this.
There are so many constituents. You know, I recently talked to somebody about homeowners insurance.
Okay.
Now, homeowners insurance, you would think has really nothing to do because they're not on the hook if you fall down in your house. But what happens is, as soon as you move out, that homeowner's agency, that company, whether it's, whoever it is, and that agent lose that client. And that client goes to whoever the new homeowner is, gets to pick their insurance company. So they're actually interested. One longer year that you stay in your home is another year of retention for that business.
Makes
Same thing
sense.
with the home care business. If you're in your home for 8 months, that they have to pay off their lead generation in an 8-month period. If you're there for 2 years, that lead generation costs them much less money. Transportation, similarly, one of the biggest problems older people have in less dense areas, suburban style areas, is transportation once they no longer drive or don't drive at night. So we get these transportation systems that were originally designed for commuters trying to pick up the slack. Now, if you have 5 people on a cul-de-sac who are aging in place, that's an efficient bus trip. If you have 1 person in a neighborhood who's aging in place, that's not an efficient bus trip. So the more people we have successfully aging in place, it's like the network effect. Your cell phone works better when somebody else has one. Your transportation system works better when somebody else is looking for the same system. It becomes more effective and efficient, and everybody saves money.
And so now with the baby boomers, that population, coming, we're not graceful in our aging. We're pretty much going into it like, how do I fight my way through this?
Stamping
Exactly.
our foot, making demands as we always have.
Exactly. So since it's no different, sir, what can each of us do? I mean, what does it look like? I need the instruction sheet or the assembly.
So we have to have the language of what we want, and that's what we're putting together right now. And then, there are ordinances in my county, Montgomery County, Maryland. We have the Design for Life movement, which is kind of an advanced visitability movement, but it's not working because the regulations got a little tough for the contractors to bother promoting. Okay. So we need local action. We need the, 2 movements, the age-friendly cities movement really kind of punts when it gets to the actual houses. It deals with transportation issues and so forth. And we need to have people in communities say, we want this. And the best way from the Frameworks Institute, what we get is the best way to get them to come to the table is to talk about fairness. So we have a line that it's fundamentally unjust to continue adding years to lives with medical miracles and not also helping people have a safe place to live and enjoy those lives.
And a quality life, yes.
And a quality life. So now let's get your, friends from, whatever walks of life.
Sure.
Going to the county council or the city council and saying, we need to do something on a county level. Now, once they've bought in at the county level, they are in already. So now you have an easier time with your sale of individual stuff because they bought in already when it wasn't about them. It was about everyone. It was about us instead of me. Now that constituency is marked by your local representative. And your local representative goes, wow, if I'm going to get reelected, I need to do something about this because my constituency cares. Now when that person goes back to the U.S. Congress or the state assembly where there's another bill, they go, oh, I've got a constituency interested in this. I'm going to join this bill. I'm going to go forward promoting it because it's what my people want. And that's how we move this forward. It's not short term. It's not, a race. It's a long term. It's a turtle movement that we have to start at the grassroots level, have the right language, and then move it forward, looking for opportunities. For example, if we're going to talk about 401k and IRA, looking like we may have, no matter who wins in 2020, we're going to be doing some adjustments to the taxes. We often do. We had a bill a few years ago. We have another way that we have to kind of resolve that. Well, here's a way, because it's an incentive, instead of it being old aging policy, which is an entitlement for poor people or sick people.
Right.
It's using your own money to supplement healthcare savings. So if you spend, $30,000 and you take it out so that you don't pay $3,000 or $900 or something of 401k taxes.
Right.
And you don't fall down. Now that $900 you didn't pay saves the government $30,000 when you don't fall down from Medicare costs.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm trying not to butt in, but I can't help myself here. Do you find that most representatives or state officials or congressmen, legislators are aware of all of this, because right as I'm taking copious notes, and I'm more excited after we get off this phone to call a couple of the folks that I know.
There have been a couple bills that are very poorly supported, in part because they're not very direct. They call for a $30,000 tax credit. Now that's very big, and it's not going to get very far.
Okay.
And again, it's about entitlement and eligibility. So it makes you focus on the issues of aging and frailty and who deserves this and who needs it, instead of going to this low-hanging fruit of the $130 billion that's already being spent and just influencing it with a what's in it for me. How can I save money on my bathroom remodeling that I've been thinking about doing? How can I save money when I go to redo my landscaping, which I have to do, and I find out that by creating a no-step entry,
right,
it's going to save me money? Well, then heck, get rid of the steps.
Yeah.
If you go in a place like Hilton Head, where it's all pretty much flat, you go and look, every house has 3 steps going in, but it's such a gentle grade that you could eliminate those steps. And now you get a discount on that. Now your landscape contractor is part of the sales force for Universal Design.
Well, before we go, because we're almost out of time, and you will, if you will agree to it, come back on again. Absolutely. And it would be really interesting, because I would love to have one of our state representatives talk with you too. I think that would be a really spirited conversation and really enlightening for a lot of us. Could you do a little shameless self-promotion for us and share how we can actually reach you, areas that we might find more about what you've been talking about? Because I think a lot of people will be interested.
That's great. Sure. My main website for this is thehomesrenewedcoalition.com. You could join. I'm not sure.
I'm in.
Like $80 or something for an individual. And it's very low because we're building a grassroots movement. And if we can get people behind us, when we go to that congressperson and say, we have 3,000 members who are really into this idea, that's what gets us over the hump. That's what makes it work. So Susan Collins recently had, this is a bipartisan issue. Everybody wants health. Everybody wants dignity.
Sure.
Everybody wants to save money for federal programs. Susan Collins recently held hearings on falls prevention. And what she said was, this is really important and it costs a lot of money, but it's not like Alzheimer's where we have to figure out what the problem is and then solve it. And it's big and huge. This is fairly simple. And the cost to reduce falls and reduce that health problem and reduce the misery that attends a fall when it steals someone's dreams on the spur of a moment is very low. We need to do something about it. So that's what I'm trying to do, is lead the movement where business people who will benefit and policymakers who can see it and grassroots constituents at every age can understand the dignity that comes from the ability to stay in your home as you age. And so go to homesrenewedcoalition.com, sign up, write me an email, join in. Maybe soon we'll be starting local chapters.
I really appreciate your time. You are an incredible interview. It's been really interesting. I think our listeners are going to be exhilarated. I think it's been amazing. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank all of you who listened this week for joining us here on the Aging in Place podcast for any stage in life. Have a great week. Hi, I'm Dr. Debbie Lines, and thank you for listening to Aging in Place for Any Stage in Life. We would like to ask you all to give us a review. Of course, preferably 5 stars. Thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed Aging in Place for Any Stage in Life.
Be a scout and be prepared. If you're planning on having surgery and know you will be out of commission, such as a shoulder, knee, or hip surgeries, stock up on healthy frozen meals, pre-cut veggies, and fruits. Not only will you be eating healthy so you can heal quickly, they're good and tasty. Having plenty of meals ready for your recuperation makes it easy on your caregivers. Going out of town on business, those prepared meals will be great for your teenagers, considering even at their age, pizza can get old every day. Even your spouse will appreciate the family-sized frozen dinner if it's their turn to cook. Who knew frozen and fresh is so handy?
Wow. Talk about an inspiring interview today. Louis Tenenbaum was pretty amazing, and I'm all fired up now. I've already been on Frameworks Institute and thinking of all my congressmen that I can chat with about aging in place and about shifting and changing some policy. So what's my takeaway? My takeaway this week is we really can make a difference. One person at a time, we can make a difference. Thank all of you for joining us here on Aging in Place for any stage in life. Have a great week.
Aging in Place podcast is hosted by Debbie Lyons and produced by Henrik de Gior. If you have any comments or questions, send an email to debbie@aginginplacepodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring this podcast, email us at pr@aginginplacepodcast.com. Thank you for listening to Aging in Place podcast.